Cisco Software Defined Access is essentially a new way to think about networking. It's a completely new way, really, to just to approach the enterprise network. Um, what it is you have your DNA center controller, which acts as as your way of managing your network now. Um, and so what it allows you to do is it allows you to have so much greater visibility into your network down to the user level. It allows you to make granular access policies, and it makes it really easy. A lot of time when you're trying to implement things like zero trust networking and segmentation, sometimes it can get very complicated. But this really simplifies that for you. It lets you create a secure network environment um, in a way that's a lot, easier and simpler, and from one platform. Um, and really, the great thing about it is consistency, right? So with this new platform, you're able to set policies. You're able to set, this is what I want my security policy to be. This is what I want my, network services policy to be, and then that's applied throughout your network. Um, and the great thing about it is it allows you to have policies that follow users versus like subnets. Typically when you're creating access policies, you're having to create policies based on, a site or a subnet. So you're saying, I'm gonna allow people access to this site or to this subnet. But with this model, you're saying, I want this user, or I want this group of users to be able to access, these services. So that allows you to be much more granular in how you apply policies. And really, it's it's a complete like I said, paradigm shift in how we think about networking. You think about a traditional network. You have your router at the edge. That's what connects you to the internet. That typically is going to connect to some core switches, and then you have your switches that connect to actual users, and then you have your wireless. And they all kind of operate as separate entities. They're all managed separately. Um, but here in a SD access fabric, right? So that all goes away. So now you're thinking of everything, and they call what's called a border node, intermediate node, and edge node. So basically, what it essentially allows you to do is, regardless of how a user is connecting to your network, whether that's over VPN, whether that's well, they're connecting to a switch, whether over wireless, the policy, how they route, how they connect to the network is the same. Across wireless, wired, it doesn't matter, right? And you're now able to, the network is no longer based on a physical location. So one nice thing about this is you typically think about, when you're building out an office, right? You have like, okay, so this floor, I'm designating this floor for finance and this group for marketing and this group for, whichever other department. And you have to set up the switch to support just finance users or just marketing users in one department and one switch. Now it doesn't matter. So wherever user plugs in, wherever they connect to the wireless, wherever they be, their access is going to be the same because it's based on the user. Um, and so that really makes, like I said, creating that policy, to be a lot easier. Um, and so just to kind of show you what this looks like, I am going to show you guys a demo here really quick. So this is Cisco DNA Center, right? So this is where you are controlling all of your network devices from. This is that central management that I was talking about here. One of the great things about this is really it's going to replace all of your network monitoring platforms, right? It's all done here with much more granular insight into what's going on in your network. So, for instance, if I wanted to look in, you go to assurance here, and you can look at the health of your network. So basically, what happens is using machine learning, DNA Center is going to establish a baseline of what's normal in your network, right? It's going to say this is what your network should look like. I've gathered this data for X number of a period of time. This is what it should look like. So anytime you go outside of those normal baselines, it's going to start to throw alarms. It's going to say, hey, this is out of what we're normally expecting to see. There's going to be an issue. And the great thing is it greatly simplifies the troubleshooting process. This this product honestly has me worried that like I'm going to be out of a job because of how easy it makes troubleshooting. Right? So this is an alarm. It says that an interface is down. Um, and so I just click this button here, machine reasoning, and it's going. DNA Center is gonna figure out why this is down and what I need to do to fix it. So it's gonna run its check here, and then it gives you the details. It says, okay, so this is the reason why it's down. Try bouncing the interface. Looks like the interface, there's a duplex mismatch on the interface, and there you go. There's the issue. So now I know, go to that interface, change the duplex, and the alarm will resolve. I didn't fix the issue. That took all of 20 seconds to do versus, in a normal network outage, right? Something's down. You gotta try to figure out, okay, what's impacted, where, what's down, how far, how widespread is it? And here, this, I'm able to figure out what the issue is in 20 seconds, and I'm able to fix it and get the network back up and running. So that's just one of the great things that you can do with this. Um, Another nice thing is it gives you client level views, right? So I think one of the biggest frustrations, as a network engineer, when you're working in support, is someone calls in, they're like, hey, you know, yesterday I lost connection to the network. I couldn't access my email. And it's like, well, it's working now. You don't really have any logs on what happened specifically to them. So like, you don't really know what actually, there's no way for you to really answer. So let's say it was Grace Smith complaining about her iPad having issues. So I can click on Grace Smith, and it's actually going to keep logs of what happened to Grace Smith's tablet here, and it can go back up to 7 days. So let's say she said, "Oh, I had the issue around 5 o'clock last night." I can look at here and see what happened at that moment in time, what was going on with her tablet. Um, it tells me that, hey, it looks like she had a bad connection to the wireless, so maybe she walked into a place where, she walked out of range of a wireless access point. So, that tells me, hey, do we need to adjust? Now we need to adjust the wireless, coverage in that area where she was. It tells you exactly, if there was a DHCP failure, it would tell you that, like, they ran out of IP addresses, they couldn't get an IP. But this gives you a really granular view on just this one client. I think that's something that's really hard to trace down in networking today. Really trying to trace down, like, okay, where is this user? Where are they plugged in? What port are they on? Are they connected to wireless? Even just trying to find their device is usually a big pain. So, this really can save. I mean, this just alone, like, if it was just this monitoring platform, I would say DNA Center is worth it. You know, just for the monitoring side of it. But this is just the assurance part of it. So you'll notice DNA Center is broken up into, design, policy, provision, and assurance. Assurance is the monitoring and the remediation side of the platform. And so this, um, if we go into design, this is where we have an inventory. This is where we can set things like the, the automatic, the software image that all my switches are supposed to run. This really simplifies, upgrading switches. I know that's one of the biggest pains as well in networking, is doing software upgrades. Here, you can just schedule it right from the DNA Center platform, and then it will run the upgrade at a specified time that you want it to run, and it's, completely hands off. It don't even let you know, like, if the software that you're running on a specific switch has a security advisory on it that you need to update on. That's where you're going to set a, like, a golden image, for, um, all the device types. So let's say, for all my 9300 switches, I want them to run this software. So anytime they connect, it's going to download that new software version, and it'll even tell you if they're out of compliance. So this is where you set your plug and play settings. So you can have it to where when you plug in, the device to the network, it's going to automatically just download all this config that it needs, based on the template that you have set up. Um, so you basically set a base template. I want all my switches to have these settings. Doesn't seem to be, this is a demo, so doesn't seem to be, loading correctly, but that's fine. Now, for instance, here, this can act as an IPAM, right? So You can put your IP addresses in here, and then it will auto provision the switches with your IP addressing for management for your different VLANs. That's automatically going to be placed in here. So this is where you can set like your different SNMP settings. What they're going to use for HTTPS. Um, and so that's this just really allows you to auto provision. This really takes you're no longer going to be having to log in and touch every single device one by one. I think that's one of the biggest headaches too, is just having to log in, keep configurations consistent across the board. Um, that's something that is really made a lot easier here. Um, and then what I was talking about with allowing access to specific groups. Um, so what's great about this is it's going to import your users. It's going to sync with Cisco ICE, and so the nice thing is, like let's say you see here we have the different groups. We have employees, we have guests, we have contractors, cameras, and so you basically just come in here and you say, okay, I want my employees to have access to cameras, but not have access to BYOD. I want they don't have access to auditors, but they do have access to developers. And so this is how you can really segment up your network. So you're really only giving users the exact access that they need, right? So um, there is no like just default I have access to everything, right? So you're giving them access on a granular level. Um, and what this does is it makes it because typically when in a typical network, right, you have everyone in a VLAN, and everyone can reach everyone in that VLAN, right? Um, the issue with that, in today's world is, with things like ransomware, if one user's machine is compromised, they now have network access to all the other machines on that VLAN, without a firewall or filtering them. So now, they're able to now jump from machine to machine, depending on how your security policies are set up there, and infect, multiple machines. Versus in this model, you can even like let's say users are in the employees group, you can prevent them from being able to communicate between each other, and you can even monitor for malware that they're sending between hosts in the same VLAN or in the same group. So that way you can really localize and contain and quarantine users that might be compromised. And so this makes a really simple way to do it. This is actually takes over for Cisco ICE. In my personal experience, ICE can be a little bit complicated to work with. I think that's a lot of this experience of a lot of people that I talk to on this. Nice thing is you never have to log in Cisco ICE with this, right? Like this completely takes over for it. So one thing you're interfacing with is here, and then whatever you whatever rules that you put into here in DNA Center is going to use an API call to update Cisco ICE. So this really just brings all of the products together, right? It's going to bring your monitoring, your security, Cisco ICE, your switches, your routers, all into one platform. So they actually did a case study. This was actually done by IDC Research. This wasn't a Cisco study. This was actually done by an independent um, research company, IDC. And they did a study on people who implemented the Cisco SD-Access and DNA Center. Um, they found an average annual benefits of 3.18 million, right? A 462% 5-year ROI, which is pretty crazy for this platform. Considering especially this is a little bit on the they're a little bit more costly. So getting a 462% ROI, and really only a 9-month payback period. Um, and they noticed that it's a 49% more efficient network staff, a 35% more efficient network security team, and an 86% reduction in unplanned downtime. And that's huge. And mostly it's because of, like I was talking about, you're able to make sure that your policies are set network wide and that your configurations are consistent. A lot of outages are caused because someone did something and there's a one-off case, a one-off configuration on just this one network device, and then you forget about it for years, and then it comes up to bite you in an outage. That kind of thing gets completely removed because now you're keeping track and making sure that all your devices are in compliance. So what makes up Cisco SD-Access, right? So these are the components of it. Um, so the first thing you need is the Cisco DNA Center appliance. This is a physical appliance, um, essentially a Cisco UCS chassis. Um, they haven't virtualized it yet, so you do have to buy the hardware. There is an actual like a virtual machine, virtual version of DNA Center that you can download. So right now it only runs on the physical appliance. That may change. They may be working on a cloud version or a virtual version, but that's not currently available. I don't know if that's even coming out, but for right now, you need the physical appliance to run, and that's going to run that portal that I was just demoing to you guys a couple minutes ago. The other portion is Cisco ICE. So this is the only optional part of Cisco SD Access, right? Like you can still run Cisco SD Access with all the automation and the monitoring, and the configurations and the policies, but you will lose the security part of it, like the actual restricting access between user groups and setting access policies. That goes away without ICE. So if there was looking for a place to potentially for cost savings, you could go without ICE, but you would just lose the security function of it. So but Cisco considers SD access, the full solution with um, ICE and DNA Center. And then the other part of it, is the hardware, right? So this is going to run on Catalyst 9000 series switches, primarily. They are backwards compatible with, I think, like the 4500 series, but those are end of sale. Um, so really, moving forward, it's just going to be the Catalyst 9000 series, and anything that comes out after that. There's also the Catalyst 8000 or 4000 series routers. Um, if you're interested in running Cisco SD-WAN, um, there is actually a direct integration between Cisco SD-WAN and DNA Center. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But if you just wanted to run the routers in regular iOS mode as just regular routers, um, then they can be fully controlled by DNA Center. But that's going to be the Catalyst 8000 series routers or the ISR 4000 series. And then the last thing is the Catalyst wireless access points and controllers. Um, so you'd either have to run the wireless controllers. What's nice is a lot of the Catalyst 9000 series can actually act as a wireless controller. So you can run a wireless controller directly on the Cisco switches themselves, rather than having to buy a separate wireless controller. Typically, you'll want to buy a wireless controller if you have a kind of a larger environment for your wireless. You'll want a dedicated controller, but if you just have a few APs, then typically switch can be just fine as your wireless controller, which is pretty nice. But those are the components that make up Cisco SD Access. And so there's also integrations with other platforms with DNA Center. So DNA Center does integrate with Cisco Meraki. Um, it's not a full, like, you can't you don't have the control over a Meraki device like you would a Catalyst device, but there is some like monitoring and integrations that are happening there. Cisco is always they're always improving these integrations, by the way. So these are going to get better over time, as they work to integrate their different products. But the other thing I was talking about, like with SD-WAN, so DNA Center can actually integrates directly with vManage, to where DNA Center will send API calls to your SD-WAN management platform to configure your SD-WAN platform as well. So now you're really getting into a single pane of glass for everything, right? Like, are you able to manage your WAN, your SD-WAN routers, your wireless, your switches, your security, all in one platform? And then the other integration is with their data center platform, ACI, which is a whole nother beast. That's a whole nother training on what ACI is and how Cisco ACI works. But you know, long story short, there's a direct integration with ACI as well. So now it doesn't matter which location they're at, right? So let's say you had 3 locations in Arizona. Um, Typically, you would set, hey, this Arizona office has access to these different services. Um, But now you can say, this user is only going to be able to access these specific services. So it doesn't matter which branch they go at, right? Like if they're at the Phoenix office and they travel to the Tucson office, they're going to have the exact same security policies applied to them, the exact same access. And that's all enabled by SD-WAN because now you're able to exchange that security information between sites to where the user is going to have the same exact policies as well. And this also applies to remote users as well. So they'll have the same level of access if they're using any connect and they're remote as they would in the office because again, it's following them regardless of where they are. So SD-WAN really kind of brings this brings it all together, to where you have this cohesive network policy, you have this cohesive security policy. You're only working out on one platform to do it. A lot of times you're having to work with multiple different platforms, different products. So this is really going to unify that across the board, regardless of where the user is, how they're connecting, or what they're doing. So really a great a great product. This can get really deep. It is pretty deep technically. And then, like I said, it is a bit of a paradigm shift in thinking about how you think about networking and how you approach it. Um, so it is a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get it set up and you get used to it, like the amount of time and convenience that it saves you, is well worth the effort.